Wednesday, May 6th. Good morning. Welcome to a coffee show this morning. It's a little bit earlier. Steve, welcome to our famous show. I'm afraid you're gonna be famous from now on. You gotta be ready for
Excellent. Can
for
watch
me.
you. It's an honor to be here.
Hey, no, we're glad you're able to join us, and we also have a special speaker today. You want to tell us a little bit about him, or he'll tell us? But just who's this guy?
Pete Andrastic, who is from Manitowoc, went through in the MAC system, went through Oncology, and has gone on through a journey, and now will be speaking at the large conference, the Theology of the Body conference that I believe the parish has been trying to promote among everyone. He'll be one of the speakers there, so we thought about bringing him on, and so I am the person to help with that.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you for being here. And yeah, Steve usually plays music for our middle school mass, so like we've been in the circle of interactions, so we're okay with
we're safe.
Yeah, we're safe. So just in case anybody's worried out there, just a word of gratitude for just amazing people. Yesterday we received such a wave of love through several people dropping out gifts, and we had a wonderful celebration of Cinco de Mayo. So yeah,
Wait a minute, we had a celebration? Did you get an invite to this?
I did not.
Yeah, what celebration? What happened?
people show up to your window and knock at your window and like bring you a gift, and you just have a beer over the window.
Oh, okay.
So it was like spontaneous, but
And that does fulfill the safer at home order.
it did, because we stayed at home and they stayed 6 feet apart, and then we celebrated Cinco de Mayo. So,
Good, okay.
yeah, so from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much for your generosity. We had an anonymous donor who gave us a couple of beers, several beers. It was super moving. So thank you very much. I should have brought my flat Corona for a flat priest. They brought me one, including a lime. So maybe tomorrow. So thank you very much for all of that. Today we want to talk about theology of the body. I don't know if this is a concept foreign to a lot of people, or you're used to it or not. But Theology of the Body was a series of talks by St. John Paul II earlier on in his pontificate on the Wednesday audiences that he gave. I don't know the dates exactly, but it was a series of talks that are recorded in several books. One of the main books is this one right here. I remember we had to read it for our sexual morality class to learn the theology of the body for St. John Paul II. So this edition is kind of nice because it's got his own handwriting notes. John Paul II. Would that be considered a third class relic?
Not quite.
Really? It's his handwriting.
Not his actual handwriting.
It's a copy of it.
Copy.
It's gotta be an original. The original notes would be.
True.
So.
And if you take a look at it, the handwriting, I don't know if that's Polish or English or Spanish, or you can't read it, but.
It's kind of like my handwriting.
Oh man, that's awesome. So yeah, the theology of the body. You was gonna tell us a little bit about what the theology of the body is?
Well, I think our former diocesan teacher should probably be our one to introduce.
So we'll make that leap, right? That our diocese uses this material to talk to our couples who are preparing for marriage. And why would the diocese use that, Steve?
Well, and in seeing this, there's great wisdom in a lot of what St. John Paul II wrote about, but within that, the diocese wants people to have access to that. So far too often we have a message that comes from us from the media of how we should be and what we should be like. And in his writing, he talks about that it's not that way, and there's a lot more to it. Theology of the body, it's a greater thing that stems from just understanding who we are, how God created us to be. And if you understand yourself and understand how you were created, it makes that marriage together be even more beautiful. And that's where the diocese really was trying to hope and bring couples along to understand who they are so that they can be together and make that marriage work.
So very often when we think about theology, like the first thing that might come to our heads is like a big book written about God and who God is and what God does. And what St. John Paul II wanted to do is to just take a look at the human body, like pure human body. And his whole thesis behind this was that just by the mere humanity of our body, by our composition, by how we're built, what thoughts, feelings, desires, everything has to do with the body, always points to a deeper reality within us, a divine reality of God. So he wanted to use our human body, our human sexuality, to point towards God. Our professor in seminary talked about theology of the body being a way for God to say that our body is like God's signature on us. Did I say that right? Now it sounds kind of vague. It's been several years since I took that class, but I found it kind of interesting that it was God's hand writing on us, like his signature on us, but just merely looking at the human body. And a lot of people, this was and is continues to be quite moving, because a lot of people reject the idea of God, but no one can reject the reality of the body. And what the body looks like, what the body is, the complementarity of male and female, and the body and the life that flows from within it. And not only that, but even deeper, the thoughts, the feelings, the type of love that is represented by the body. That a lot of times even, so for the English word, right, it's common that we only use one word for love, like love, right? I love my shoes, I love my pet, I love my car, I love my wife, or my husband, or whatever that may be. But the reality, the profundity of love, in this case, that eros, that erotic love that God has for us, that in the common society, the word erotic has been distortion, has unfolded on a light that is not necessarily what God intended, yet without denying that there's a certain love, deep, like fiery love on our Father's end for us. And that's what St. John Paul II tried to portray, right?
But he also greatly desired to bridge what had become, he saw the so-called sexual revolution for what it was, which was this false sense of emancipation, that somehow that by reclaiming quote-unquote ownership over one's body, including one's sexuality, one was being liberated from something that was an enslavement, something that was an inhibition, something that was limiting the ability of the human person to express the fullness of their being through who the individual is as male, as female, as a sexual being, and that somehow these were parallel realities, if not parallel, extremely distracted realities. John Paul II said, absolutely not. These are not distracted realities. And that if anything, they have to be reintegrated in order to be fully understood and fully lived out. And so part of the genius of what he was doing was countering the lies of liberation, false liberation, the lies of separation between our being as godly beings and our beings as sexual beings, and somehow the two never should meet, when in reality they have to be integrated, or neither of them can be fully lived out or understood. That's the real genius of theology of the body.
Absolutely. And so when it comes to the married life, right, that beautiful reality that I've have friends, couples that have gone through like a deep study of theology of the body, and they come back and they're marveled by the beauty, the liberation in their spirit of knowing what they were built for, of knowing that their thoughts, their desires for love, for passion were orderly, were placed there by God, and that they point towards God, and like the beauty that that brings to their marriage, to their family. Yeah, so it just,
It is. It's profound in the sense when we first started unpacking this and doing this. We started with a very small group in the diocese. It was deacons. It was different parish leaders, and I actually remember before we belonged here at St. Francis, there was a deacon from here, Deacon Paul Kiefer, was at this when we had presented this, and he, after we had gone through the series and talked about it and went through it, he had tears in his eyes and saying, where was this when I was younger? Where was this in my formation? He thought this is something that everyone should have, all future couples should have. And that's speaking, and he was older at that time, and just how touched by the information that was unpacked in this for him and for everyone. I think that speaks a lot to it. And so it's, I think as you mentioned, Father, is, we're kind of always given a little bit of a lie of what that is, and it's through this, it kind of gives us that lens to see it a little clearer of what is really God's plan for us.
so I think that in society, and even in the church at times, like, there's this, almost this taboo of like speaking about sexuality and what it is and how to explain it to parishioners from a priestly perspective, or even at home from parents to children, how to like safely and properly talk about sexuality, what it is, what it represents, the beauty that it has. And a lot of times for many years, like this idea of the separation of the body from the spirit, of parents not knowing how to talk to their children, how to explain the realities that are coming up to their hearts in their teenage years, right? Their desire for love, their desire for passion, their desire that God is placing that within us, that God is drawing us closer to Himself. And it's not a matter of suppressing our feelings, it's not a matter of just kind of forgetting all of those feelings, hormones that come to us, but it's just embracing and putting them into perspective. That they are a gift from God, and that all of those things point towards the reality of God's love and passion for us.
The church, I'm sorry, Father, go ahead.
No, that's all right. We've guessed him. We're preaching here and not letting him speak, and we have Steve on the speaker as well, so let's be aware of that.
And I can give,
Oh,
I was gonna say, I can give Pete a call.
Sure. So before we call Pete, he'll tell us who he is, but there's a conference coming up on Theology of the Body this weekend, and I'm sure we'll put the flyer up. And this is a free conference for the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with amazing speakers. And one of those speakers will be Peter Andrastic, who is a graduate from Roncalli, a friend of the parish, and a friend of Father Doug. So just an FYI, he'll talk about what it is and what he does. So I think we need to just turn up. So if you can't hear us there with Peter on the speakerphone, just let us know and we'll try to fix it. Does he know he's going to be live?
Good morning, Pete.
Good morning.
How are we doing today?
You good? How you doing?
Good. All right, it's just we have you on speakerphone and through speaker, so hopefully this all goes well. So.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
It's really soft.
Is
Yeah,
it?
push it up higher, yeah. Welcome, this is Father Doug. Welcome, Pete. Good to have you on with us this morning.
Great, thanks. It's great to be here.
Are you at home are able to hear us? So hopefully you are.
I'm at work. I'm in my office. My office is very isolated, and so that's where I am, and so it's nice and quiet here. I can hear you guys pretty well.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Peter, welcome to our morning cafe with our priest here in Manitowoc. We heard that you're a native of this beautiful land. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? No, I can't hear you very well.
Sure.
Very well.
So just they want to know a little bit about. Tell us about yourself, Pete, and who you are, and
Yeah, so I'm married. married to Chrissy. We've been married for almost 16 years now. We have 7 children, expecting our 8th. The 8th one's coming in early October, and we live in Menominee Falls, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. I was born and raised in Manitowoc, so I'm a Manitowoc native, and did my undergrad at UW Oshkosh, did a master's degree in theology at Ave Maria University, and I work for the Evangelical Catholic, which is an organization that works with parishes and dioceses, military installations, universities around the world, really helping to do evangelization more effectively.
Nice. All right.
Peter, you want to tell us a little bit about theology of the body? What it is, how it's lived in the family, the people that you work with, and college students?
Sure. So theology of the body, for those people who don't know, is basically a compilation of Wednesday audiences that John Paul II put together between 1979 and like 1984. And basically his whole, you could say like the thesis of the theology of the body is that the body, the human body, and in fact only the body, is capable of transferring into the visible order that which is invisible, namely the divine and the spiritual. And so our bodies, in all of their materiality, are transparent precisely to what is invisible. And so I am a man down to my soul, and that reveals something of the mystery of God. And woman, the same. She reveals in her body, she reveals what's transparent, or she reveals what's invisible, and that reveals something of the mystery of God. And man and woman together, complementary, is an even fuller vision of this mystery of God. And so it's a very practical topic, because what the theology of the body in a sense does, it introduces us to the sacramental nature of the body. So, a sacrament is an instrument of God's presence and action in the world. It transfers into the visible and material order that which is invisible, okay? And so our body is like a sacrament. You can think of the sacrament, the 7 sacraments, as capital S sacrament, so our body is like a small s sacrament. It's the same, similar sort of a thing. And so our bodies have a language. Whatever we do, there's a language to it, and we can reveal truth, or we can reveal lies with our body based on how we live and act and move.
That's awesome. Peter, could you tell us, like, from your experience in your own family and then the work you've done in colleges, how does the theology of the body make a difference in the married life, in marriages, or and even in college students who are going through the difficult choices of knowing themselves, of knowing how to handle their emotions, their desires, their hormones? Like, how does this affect them? How is this good or bad for them?
Oh boy, well, the reasons that it is good are legion, you could say. many good reasons to become familiar with the theology of the body. I would say one is understanding the theology of the body. John Paul II referred to human beings as psychosomatic subjects, okay? So that means that psycho, soul, somatic, body, subjectivity, we're a person. So I am a person of body and soul. I'm a body-soul composite. And these two things, they're distinct, but they're integrated. They form an integrated whole. And so my body and my soul communicate with each other, or they ought to. They do. We can't help it. And so, things like desire, right? Okay, desire is a huge aspect of what we all face, and our desires ultimately are all ordered to God. And so when I have a desire, the obvious stuff that theology of the body kind of touches on is communion between people, right? So love and sexual relationships and that sort of thing. And when someone desires communion with another, when someone has this desire for relational fulfillment or sexual fulfillment, what they're really desiring is they're desiring a relationship with God, and the body is an instrument that ought to order that relationship. That ought to, the body. How can I say this? The body reveals that desire, and it's also supposed to facilitate that desire if it's ordered well. And if it's not ordered well, if I act on those desires in a way that's not in accordance with God's plan, what happens is I get all disordered, and it frustrates that desire, and I descend into unhappiness, right? And I don't mean like emotional unhappiness. I mean like happiness is to the soul, which fitness is to the body. You could say it's kind of like a habitual state of being in possession of the good. And so that's probably the most obvious way that it's important to understand the theology of the body. But in other ways as well, that right now I think the new frontier, you could say, in the realm of pastoral work is this marriage between theology and psychology. Because, we have intellect, but the intellect is distinct from our brain, okay? And our brain, as part of our body, is an instrument of our intellect. And it allows the spiritual faculty to work in this material world. And so when we're wounded in some way, emotionally or psychologically, that has effects on our soul. And our sin can also lead to various psychological and emotional problems. And so when someone becomes mired more and more in sin, that can actually lead to various emotional and psychological disorders. So understanding the theology of the body, knowing that like the body and the soul are so connected, can help us, and knowing that we're called to healing with effectiveness, we're called to redemption with effectiveness. Grace is real, but also that grace isn't magic, that we also need, help sometimes from professionals. The marriage of those two things, understanding the psychosomatic subjectivity, can really facilitate a lot of healing on the emotional and psychological order. And then in my talk, I deal with the whole notion of work, that work, our everyday work, whether it's professional or housework, whether it's intellectual or manual, our work is the hinge of our sanctity, and we work with our bodies. And so when we work, if we work well, when we do what we're supposed to be doing, when we're supposed to be doing it, and put our whole selves into it, we bring into the visible order the gospel of work. And that work is attractive and it's beautiful. And it cooperates with God's creative and redemptive power, and it's also evangelical as well. And so when people work well, that is their fate as fishers of men. Even prestige, right? Prestige gets a bad rap. Well, no, egotism is the bad thing. Prestige can be good, can be a means, because it can attract people, and you can do a lot of good with work well done. So
That's awesome.
I guess those are some like little ideas to just introduce how theology of the body is really important.
That's awesome. So for the people listening to us, if they're the verge of deciding whether they should join us for the weekend conference or not, what would you tell them? Why should they join us?
In the weekend conference?
Yeah, this coming weekend, right? This Friday through Sunday?
That's right, yep. Well, first of all, it's free.
Everyone in Manitowoc loves free, so.
Yeah, and there also is a premium pass, and I'll get to that in a second, but, first of all, you got nothing to lose, and you get exposure to, some of the greatest, leading, like, thought leaders in this field. Christopher West, obviously, is going to be speaking. I believe Jeff Kazin is going to be speaking. I think Scott Hahn is speaking. There's just Father Thomas Loya. There's about 70 different speakers all talking in their own kind of area of specialty and bringing in principles of theology of the body to support that. There's also going to be a track of artists. There's going to be a bunch of music and I don't know, visual artists as well who are going to be talking about how theology of the body applies to that. So there's a little something for everyone. There's going to be topics on psychological health, on sexual ethics, on interiority and prayer. There's going to be topics on, like as I said, art and music, beauty. So there should be a little something for everybody. And I believe you can watch at your own leisure. I believe the way it's going to happen is when you register, and then when it opens up on the weekend, there's like a list of all the speakers and all the topics, and you can just listen at leisure in the order that you like. It's not like there's a schedule that you have to abide by, because this is worldwide. There's like 42,000 people around the world who have registered for this. The premium pass allows you to listen past the weekend. So Sunday night, the whole thing closes down, you don't have access anymore. But after Sunday night, if you purchase the premium pass, which is heavily discounted now, you get it forever. And you get there's bonus material as well that could be available. That isn't available to the basic pass.
That's awesome. And there will be like a lot of like amazing speakers on the topic like you mentioned. If people wanted to hear the celebrity of Manitowoc, what time will you be speaking at that conference?
Well, yeah, as I said, I don't think there's a time slotted for any of us because all the talks are pre-recorded.
Oh, I see.
Yep. I pre-recorded mine. Everyone pre-recorded theirs. They sent it in, and then they'll just be. Once it opens, I think it's like 11 o'clock on Friday morning, I think Central Time, something like that. Once it opens, all the talks are available at any time. And so you just click on the one you want to hear and listen to it. And you can do that at 2 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon for the duration of the weekend. That's how it works during the weekend, because they're all pre-recorded and sent in.
That's awesome. So it could be a kind of like a weekend retreat, right? For all of us to dive into the beauty of the body and what God is trying to tell us through it.
That's right, yep. And then with the premium pass, there are a couple other things. There's, like I said, there's bonus material, but then I think the premium pass is also some Q&A time. There's Q&A panels, and those are at specific times. So if someone were to purchase a premium pass, and they wanted to participate in the Q&A panel that I'm doing, that's going to be at 1 o'clock on Saturday, I believe. So that's going to be live. So then they can interact with me and a few others who are talking on kind of similar topics.
That's awesome. Hey.
Yeah, it should be great.
Pete, thank you very much.
Yes, Pete, good to hear you. Good to look forward to seeing you. I know Jacinda and I will be at least trying to click on. We'll maybe try to hit yours right away in the beginning of the conference.
Yeah, that's right. Get out of the way.
I hope your mom is listening to all of us here, especially you today. I know Lucy is part of, it's our parishioner here in the parish, so it's such a joy to have you and to hear from you, Peter. Thank you very much for all that you do for our students, our college people, and then our whole church, really. Thank you for doing this.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one, Pete.
Thanks, bye.
Have a good one.
That's awesome. So that was Peter, a friend of yours, right? And
Yeah, actually, Pete I graduated at Roncalli with Pete. I also roomed with him in college as well, so known Pete all the way through and his family. So yeah, it's a journey. It's amazing to see and see how people, where they go with that, and Pete took this and has really gone far in his faith with that, and really has been sharing that with others. I know he speaks throughout the state as well, so he's a speaker among and talks on many different topics as well. So
That's awesome.
I wonder if Steve couldn't help us as we wind this up to, at least in a nutshell, tell us how this goes so much further than just theory and pie in the sky theology, and why it actually is practical and practicable in reality.
yeah, I would say, one of the things that Theology of the Body presents, and I'm going to just speak on a married side of things, is you always hear that, you got to go 50-50 on things. Oh, I'll give half, you give half. But ultimately, what Theology of the Body is calling married couples to do is to give 100 and 100, and you're giving it all to each other. It's like Jesus opened himself up. You see it on the cross. There's, for little kids, you talk about how much Jesus loves you this much, but it also is on that marriage side, is opening yourself up to each other, and as Jesus opened himself up to us. So it's a lot of those connections on understanding that through Theology of the Body, it works to really help you understand how to treat each other, but how to interact with each other. And it's just, there is a lot to unpack, but ultimately in that nutshell, it's just how can we understand who we are, because until you know who you are, it is really hard to give a gift, and that's what John Paul II calls it, is that gift. You can't give something you don't have. So if you don't understand who you are, it makes it really impossible to give that to your spouse, to that other person. And I think that's what St. John Paul II talks about, is that ability to give yourself and understand who you are, who God made you to be. And through that, there's a lot of different resources on there. Like we said, there's the conference, but there are books. I know that they're available. The easiest one, I think, if this is something that intrigues you, it's Theology of the Body for Beginners. And that is this guy right here. It is a simple book, easy read, but it really unpacks, unlike what these two had to do and read, the big thick version. It's a nice Cliff Note version of it. And I think you can really dive into it. But again, it's understanding that the body, it's the
language, and the beauty of St. John Paul II and his thought was that we're truly a gift that is a gift that is not meant to be used, is not meant to be abused, but is meant to be freely given to the one you love. And then in that communion of love between spouses, then the life of children really flows. I was really struck earlier on in my priesthood when I was talking to a friend about children, and he really pointed out that once you see the beauty of children, once you see the meaning behind the theology of the body, the beauty of giving of oneself to your spouse, and you began to see children in a whole different light. And it is not a matter of whether it's like Ed case with Peter, right? Who's pregnant is 8. By the way, you got some work to catch up.
I don't know.
But the whole point that in the light of the beauty of the gospel and the beauty of God, it's that children are not a burden, that children are such a beautiful gift that resembles that life-giving reality of the communion of the spouses, when they love each other, when there's nothing in between, that they're freely given and completely given of each other, that the life, I don't have kids, so I can't. But
Well, during this Safer at Home, I think you might question whether or not they're a gift right now, but yes, they are, and that's the key, is the love that comes forth from that is seen in your children, and that's like all of your parents, you're that gift, that love for others. That's that passing on.
for sure, I'm definitely the love for my parents. So, if you haven't had the chance to take a look at this great resource, please research it. There's a ton of videos on YouTube that talk about theology of the body. Christopher West, Jason Everts, is it Jason? Yeah, Everts, right?
Jason Everts.
A lot of different really solid speakers that talk on this subject For you parents, it's super helpful to dive into it, to get to know it, to share it with your children in a way that is pure, in a way that will lead you ultimately to God. And so I can't sponsor it enough. I wish that perhaps we can spend the rest of the show talking about theology of the body and unpacking the beauty of it. But that's just a thought.
Let them go to the conference first. Let them, seek
So-
some understanding from special people.
You'll see a link to the conference. Connie put it up there on the comments area. It's free. Sign up, take a look at it. Plenty of really good talks that will be transformative, really life-giving. So if you get the chance, please sign up, and then we'll talk about Monday and see how it went, if anybody got to it. So I know you guys got to go to Mass with our children. So should we close with a prayer? Anything else for the good of the matter?
Tomorrow will be 8 o'clock again.
That's awesome. If you haven't watched the whole video, please go back and look at it from the beginning. It's really good. Our guest speaker was excellent. So, should we pray? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Good and loving Father, thank you for showing us your love through our bodies. Thank you for the wisdom that you gave St. John Paul II to explain the nature of our body, the feelings, the emotions, the desires that flow from our hearts. We ask that you may help us to lead those emotions, those feelings, those desires to you, that you may help us to truly unpack the gift that we are, that we may come to fully know your love and your mercy, that it may become alive in our hearts. We thank you for the many speakers that lead us to you, that unpack the beauty and the reality of your love for us. And we ask you to be with us and to bless us. And the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in peace.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you for joining us.